Welcome to Between State Lines.
Welcome back to Between State Lines, episode 41. This will be a two-parter, and we're gonna read a pretty good story. It's a long story, so we'll break it into two parts. So this is part one, and then part two next week. But for now, we'll just get started. We had a really interesting week in America. Tariffs on every single country in the entire world except for Russia.
Yeah. Heard about the penguins. Yeah. The world's been crazy. I don't know. I feel so disconnected from it, and like that, I don't know, feeling in the pit of your stomach. Like, this is not okay. We're not okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's like this was the week that kind of just felt like just awful because you knew it was coming and then it dropped and you're like, wow, okay, so literally everything is going to get more expensive.
Yep. Yeah. Impending doom.
But hey, TikTok is safe for another 2.5 months. They're kicking that down the road.
Oh, okay. I guess at least we have that.
At least we can crash out daily on TikTok because thank you. I'm not gonna say thank you, Trump, but thanks to Trump, we will have it for. I don't think he's ever going to get a deal to go through. I think he's just gonna keep doing this for all 4 years.
But like 2 months? Why not just be like, I'll deal with this next year?
Well, I think the max he's. I mean, again, he's done everything. Okay, I guess the max he can legally extend it to 75 days, but like he's also done a lot of shit that's against the law. So I mean, I don't know why he doesn't just kick it down the road 4 years.
Yeah. Do whatever you want.
Do
You're
whatever,
doing it anyways.
right? um, so we're safe for a little bit. That's great. Oh, so I didn't read the story, but I heard the story. I listened to a podcast called Creepcast where they read scary stories and or creepy stories. And this story apparently is getting made into a movie starring Sydney Sweeney, and it's called "I Pretended to Be a Girl That Went Missing." And so the story, I don't want to spoil it. So if anyone wants to read the story, you can stop listening here and come back in like 5 minutes. Um, the story is basically this girl, Sydney Sweeney, ran away from home. She's about 27 years old, and she finds like missing persons ads for this one individual girl from 12 years before, and the girl looks like almost identical to her. So she decides to uh since it's been so long, go impersonate the girl, return home, quote unquote, rob the family, and then like leave, like go there for one day, rob the family and leave. So shitty premise. She gets there, right? And they're all in shock, like, "Oh my god, you're back. What happened?" Blah blah. And she finds out through the girl's brother, who is about 10 years younger than the girl she's impersonating, that her dad, the missing girl's dad, killed the girl and buried her in the backyard where they had like this big gazebo with like a flower bed and like basically a big, monument to his daughter he murdered. So she figures out like this, like, oh fuck, I gotta get out of here. So she books it and leaves with the brother, like they get out of town. And but on the way out, she decides to light the gazebo on fire because she wants someone to find the girl and figure out the dad is guilty and there's some justice to be served. So she lights it on fire. She leaves with her brother. They go like, they hitchhike their way out of town, And like, the next day they're watching the news and they're covering the story of this big fire at the house. And it turns out the gazebo had a bunker beneath it. And in the bunker was the missing girl with her child. And now both of them are dead because
Oh
they
my
inhaled
God.
smoke. Yeah.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep. And that's how it ends. It's like them seeing the news and her being like, "Oh fuck, I killed your sister."
My God.
Yeah. So I was like, "Damn, it's gonna be a interesting film when they make it to see how they change it around." But yeah, that's like, holy shit. Can you imagine though, like impersonating someone and then you being the one that actually killed them?
No, that was such a bad idea to begin with. Why would you want to take advantage of this family somebody's missing from? You return. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that coming.
I thought that I had a feeling like listening to the story. I was like, it sounds like the dad is guilty because the dad in the story is like, when she comes in, he's surprised, but he's like the least surprised. And I was like, okay, he's got to have like been responsible for something that happened to her. But I was not expecting it to be like, I mean, they hinted that obviously the daughter was impregnated by him, was like raped by him, and like it's his child. That's what it's hinted at in the story. But I was like, didn't expect that, and I did not expect the daughter to be alive and in a bunker. Like,
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I guess. Oh my God.
uh, I thought about reading that story this week, but I was like, I just read it, and I was like, it's short, so it won't be long enough. But um, oh, did you know? Have you ever hear about the Mount Everest Rainbow Valley?
No.
So Rainbow Valley is it's located obviously on Mount Everest on its northern ridge at an altitude of approximately 26,000 feet or just under 8,000 meters. Um, which is often referred to as the death zone because oxygen is so insufficient, it makes it really hard for you to live, and that's where the majority of people dies in that death zone.
Okay.
Um, and obviously, when they die on the mountain, they're up there forever because it's too expensive to retrieve them and it's too dangerous. So they're just up there dead, and they're obviously preserved because it's so cold up there. But Rainbow Valley is where all of their bodies pretty much are. If they're not on the mountain still up there, they're in Rainbow Valley, either by being moved by people going up the mountain or like being blown off the mountain. Like there was one girl, one woman who died sitting up, and I think she was frozen there for like a few years, and eventually the winds blew her off of the mountain into this valley.
My God. So
So,
it's just a bunch of like how many people are we talking here?
so it's in the hundreds because there's over 327 people have died on Everest. So not everyone obviously is in the valley, but it's in the hundreds, and um, so it's known as Rainbow Valley because all of their gear is colorful, so you can spot them when they're climbing. And so if you ever hike or yeah, I guess hike up Mount Everest if you want to, you will see this valley, colorful valley of bodies and gear and tents and trash. And obviously, it's hard to get a picture because you're concentrating on surviving at that
Surviving.
point. But yeah, so um, but yeah, I saw that. I didn't even know about that, like the valley, until this past week. I was on TikTok and saw a video where they like cover a different person who's died on the mountain every single like video, and it's crazy.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
one uh girl is known as Sleeping Beauty because she died in 1998, and she appears still to this day serene, because she's frozen in place and her body is just intact, no decomp, nothing.
Wow, that's intense. I can't imagine trying to survive and then going past these people.
Yeah, I mean it's like that's hard. And like the one girl who died frozen sitting up, she took a break because she was having trouble breathing. And I think, if I recall correctly, she is one of the first people to ever summit Mount Everest without using supplemental oxygen. So she didn't bring oxygen with her. So she went up on her own, like with her team, with no oxygen, and then made it up to the summit. And on the way back down is when she had trouble, and she stopped, breathe for a few minutes, and that essentially was her death sentence, because you get so exhausted from lack of oxygen that you just stop moving, and then you die.
Oh my gosh. Wowzers. Made it to the top and everything on the way back down.
Yep. I I don't like. People are weird. I'm not. She's not weird. People are crazy for like doing this. That's so dangerous to even go up there with oxygen. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it in me, that's for sure.
There was one story. It actually made a movie based on it. That happened, I think it was late '90s, where the team went up there, and I think they made it up to the top and summited it. But on the way back down, there was a blizzard that came over the mountain, and then I believe an avalanche happened, and so their team got like broken up. And so, like, not only are you fighting the elements, like the oxygen, you're also fighting the weather. So it's like, are you gonna get hit by a blizzard or avalanche gonna fall down on you? Then you're just definitely dead. But you know what? I guess honestly, if you're gonna go, that's the way to go, because you die pretty quick because you literally can't breathe, and then you just pass out.
I guess. I don't know. It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, right. Sounds like
Yeah, every
nightmare
part
fuel.
of that sounds like you're putting yourself through a nightmare.
They're
But
absolute hell.
if that's your goal, if that's your dream, go good for you. That
And
sounds.
you know what? If any of our listeners know of anyone who is actually summited Mount Everest, we would love to have them on the podcast.
How many people have done it versus how many people have died?
Let me Google this. How many people have successfully? So there have been 12,884 successful um, ascents, considering multiple climbs. So individually, 7,269 people, but 12,884 times someone has summited Mount Everest, because people have gone up there more than once, which is insane.
Yeah, just like keep gambling,
Yeah.
pushing yourself and gambling.
You have a success rate of between 60 and 70%. That's pretty high, but I mean, you have to be like really trained well and know what you're doing.
Yeah,
Unrelated to this, so
nightmare.
before I got on here, I was obviously rocking my daughter, putting her to bed, and we're sitting there and we're reading this book, and it's like a book that has a song component to it. And so my wife usually sings the song and it's fine, but I was singing it tonight, and my daughter took the book out of my hand after the third verse and handed it to my wife, and it was like, "You read this, not me." Like, thank
Man,
you.
not a fan.
Not only that, like I told Steph this earlier, but I was laying down, pretend to be Snow White, which is her favorite character of all time, and I said, "Oh, I need insert her name here. Uh, you to kiss me to wake me up." And I'm laying there, eyes closed, and instead of her kissing me, she clubs me in the face with a Hot Wheels car and and runs away. I guess is an efficient way of getting me awake. Is clubbing me.
She got you good.
Okay. So, um, for today's episode, I mentioned we will tell a story. Tell a story. I have this sour candy is fucking my brain. We will read a story. From Reddit. Creepy story. Let me pull it up. It's a 10-parter, and we'll split it into 2 podcasts. So we'll probably get through part 5 in this part, and then the rest of it next week. And the story is called "My First Night Alone in My New House Didn't Go So Well," and it's by user the Littered Fox 326, and it's 8 years old, so it's a pretty old story. Let me spit my candy out so I can actually talk. Do you? Wait, that's a question. When you eat hard candy, do you just like dive in and like crunch them, or do you
Yeah, sometimes I can't help it.
I can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like right away, but I can't wait.
Yesterday I went and got obviously I sent you or I told you I went to Costco, and I got a hot dog, or as I like to call it, a glizzy, as the kids say. Well, I'm not allowed to call that a glizzy in my house. But I ordered it, and my order number was 420. And like I'd never gotten that before, so that was pretty cool. Claire was not impressed, but I was. Okay, so my first night alone in my house didn't go so well. We just built our house, Will and I, and last month we were able to move in. It's small, not even 1,000 square feet. His parents call it a micro home. I call it perfect. It's just us and our 2 dogs. Well, 3 now, but I'll mention that later. First, I should explain a few things so this story makes sense. I have lived most of my life here in Colorado. I was born and raised in Denver. I took a hiatus when I went to college out of state, but I came back. It's home. Our new house is just east of the Front Range and south of Denver. We're pretty far out of the city. It takes 30 minutes or so to reach the city limits of Denver. And our nearest and pretty much only neighbor, Steve, is just over half a mile away, which isn't really all that far. I can see his house from here as I type this. He's also my best friend and has been since high school. It's really an awesome setup for Will and I, and we love it. But last night didn't go so well. Will is out of town for work for 4 days, leaving me and the dogs alone in the new place for this first time. It didn't occur to me to be bothered by this since I've spent plenty of nights alone before. The day was as normal as could be. I drove Will to the airport without any trouble, came home, took the dogs for a stroll around the property, got some work done. I talked to Will on Skype for a while, made dinner, and retired to the deck out back afterwards. I was sitting in a chair, enjoying the cool air, minding my own business. Down the road a bit, I could see the lights on in Steve's house. Not a thing seemed to be out of the ordinary. I was so enjoying the night air that I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment, took in the smells and the sounds of nature all around me. And that's when one of the dogs growled. The sound made me sit up so fast I almost fell out of my chair. I studied the 3 dogs and figured out pretty quickly it was Big Ben who made the noise.
Ears alert, he was staring off into the night with keen eyes. The two girls were equally alert, although they didn't seem to have heard or seen what he had. They looked to him while he continued to gaze toward the backyard. He gave another low, almost inaudible growl. Now there's certain sounds that dogs make that really put you on alert. This was one of them. It was an unsure, almost hesitant growl, like something was spooking him, but he didn't know exactly what. I followed his gaze, but nothing within the confines of the fenced-in backyard seemed to miss. Unless there was an animal just beyond the wooden fence. As far as I could tell, there was nothing at all for him to be growling about. I watched him for a minute, and he kept looking in the same place. He'd sniff the air, and his ears would swivel as though something just beyond his ability to sense was out there. I started to feel a bit creeped out, but the other two dogs, Danny and Nina, didn't seem to pick up on anything. I studied him for a few more minutes and finally convinced myself he was overreacting about something or imagining things. So Big Ben is our newest addition. He showed up a few weeks before the house was finished, just out of the blue one day while I was checking on the progress of things. He's a massive, shaggy black bear of a dog, although he seemed to be a stray. He had come right up to me, tail wagging, and greeted me as though he'd been my dog all his life. Who could turn him away? We took him in immediately, and the vet we took him to found no microchip, and no one around had heard of a missing dog, so we kept him. Will was the one who named him, and a fitting name it is. He's 100 pounds, and his shoulder almost comes up to my hip. I'm convinced he's got wolf in him. He's been like an oversized puppy from day one, never aggressive, and as obedient and loyal as our girls. But at times I have some trouble figuring him out. Sometimes he does weird things, growls at nothing, stops dead in his tracks like he hears something, or stares into the distance like he sees something we don't. At the end of the day, we have no idea what his life was before us. It is possible. It was possible. It is possible he was on his own for months. The vet thinks he's about 3. His heightened sense of awareness could just be from being on his own for so long, having to look out for himself. Nonetheless, I felt a distinct shift in the atmosphere as a result of him growling in the darkness. I was genuinely uneasy for the first time since Will had left. Was fully appreciating the fact that aside from my trio of dogs, I was alone. My eyes involuntarily drifted towards Steve's house. The light from within gave me a sense of comfort. Knowing I could pick up the phone and have him at the door in minutes calmed me down some. But I wasn't about to bother him over this. I was going to head back in for the night when I looked towards the black shadow of the mountains, and then I heard it. It was a very faint, almost indescribable sound coming from the woods. A pattering sound, like something walking on the forest floor. It was so faint that I wasn't even sure if I was hearing it or my ears were playing tricks on me. It could have been the light breeze rustling the leaves. And then a light wind came up, and I swear, the moment it did, I heard what sounded like someone saying, "Shh." That freaked me out. But when I strained to listen, it was hard to distinguish the sounds of the wind and the leaves from anything else. I thought I imagined it. The dark was making me freak myself out. The sound of faint footfalls continued. It went on for a few minutes before it was so faint I couldn't tell if it was wind or not. I shrugged it off. There's deer back here and stray cats and probably other animals I have never even seen. There was no reason to worry about it, but it was still sufficiently enough to creep me out. So I went back inside. I watched Netflix, yay, Peaky Blinders, for a bit, but got sleepy. But do you have something against Peaky Blinders?
No. I was just getting more sour candy. I cannot stop eating it. I'm gonna have the worst tummy ache. It's so good though.
How sour is it? Any of that candy?
This stuff is really sour. Like, so sour that sometimes some of the flavors are just not good. But they're really sour. And then the Sour Patch Kids, I don't know. This is a really sour Sour Patch Kids. I tried to look to see if it like said extra sour or anything. Nope. But the sour gummy worms, that's just like average. They're all stuck together though.
I've never had a sour candy that's like, oh wow, yeah. I've never had a sour candy that's like really been overpowering to me. I've looked, I've tried.
This one, it's really sour, I would say. Like, it kept making me make faces because it was really sour. I don't know what you're doing, Mike and Ike, but yeah, my brain's twitching, but I can't stop.
You're just gonna burn all your taste buds off.
Yeah, I'm like, I have a little bit of everything in my hands.
By
Nothing against Peaky Blinders.
by 11, I was in bed, and it didn't take long for me to fall asleep, but I didn't stay asleep. A sharp, urgent growl woke me up with a start. When your dogs alert you like that when you're awake, it's unnerving enough. Waking up to it is worse. My immediate thought was there's something going on that I've missed. Not a very pleasant feeling. My heart was racing as I strained to see in the dark. Big Ben was sitting at the foot of the bed, looking towards the window. The curtains were drawn, so there was no way he could possibly see anything there. Then Danny gave a growl, and Nina chimed in. I'm not going to lie, I was already scared. It's hard to not let your imagination run away with you in this situation. There was a light breeze, and to my horror, I realized I left the window open. I never leave windows open at night, not even when Will is home. Our bedroom is on the ground floor, and I don't feel safe doing it. I even felt vulnerable. I felt more vulnerable knowing I had stupidly left the damn window opening. Big Ben growled again. This was different from the unsure growling he had done on the deck. This was louder and more urgent and more like he knew what he was hearing or smelling. And it was something that absolutely warranted being growled at. Another breeze rustled the curtains, and there was an unnatural shift in the shadows outside. Something was moving out there on the deck. I sat bolt upright, causing the dogs to go into full protection mode. Big Ben was barking his warning bark, and the girls joined. At the sound, whatever was outside ran for it. Heavy, loud footfalls. One of my dolls in the back fell down.
Ooh, hate that.
Heavy, loud footfalls could be heard above the chaotic barking as it bolted along the deck. With my dogs flanking me, I reached through the slit in the curtains, slammed the window shut, and locked it. I yanked the curtains fully closed, rolled back across the bed, and pulled out the revolver I keep in my nightstand. Dogs were going berserk, and I had to almost yell at them to stop barking. I got my phone and called Steve. Still growling, Big Ben poked his head behind the curtain to look outside. I was shaking all over, sweating bullets as the phone rang. Nina stood at the closed bedroom door like a sentry, ears erect, listening for further threats. Danny was standing upright, but still in the bed. I had never been so glad to have them. Steve picked up, sounding sleepy, and I told him what happened. I was almost crying as I did, and he told me not to move because he was coming right over. I couldn't have moved even if I had tried. I was too terrified. I just sat in the bed with the gun in hand and dogs surrounding me. I finally noticed the time, 2:15 in the morning. I heard Steve let himself in not 5 minutes later. We have keys to each other's houses, and he knocked on the bedroom door. Leah, are you all right? Yeah, it's open, I told him. He came in and was wide-eyed and looked about as scared as I was. He was carrying his shotgun with him. The dogs were usually all over him when he visited, but they pushed past him to go investigate the house. "Which way do you think it ran?" Steve asked me. "It took off towards the trees," I said, still in disbelief. He looked in the direction of the woods that bordered the property. "Could it have been a deer?" he asked. I strained to remember the sound of whatever it was thundering across the deck, and I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted it to be a deer. I so wanted it to have been a wild animal that had simply wandered too close. "I guess it could have been," I replied. Truth was, deep down, I knew whatever had sprinted across my deck hadn't done so on 4 legs. Steve looked concerned, like he knew I didn't really believe that theory, but didn't say anything. "It could have just been kids, like playing a prank or something," I asked, hoping it could be as simple as that. He glanced uneasily out the window again. I could tell he was trying hard not to scare me. I know my best friend. He thought it was something more malignant than kids being jerks. Big Ben came back into the bedroom. He licked Steve's hand and jumped on the bed, curling up so he was practically on my lap. Steve, against my wishes, went to investigate the deck. I watched him the whole time from the window, still reeling from the whole ordeal. If it had been a human out there, my paranoid mind was convinced they were just beyond the trees, still watching the house. I was on edge until he came back inside. He had walked around the perimeter of the entire house with his shotgun and found no traces of anything. Nonetheless, I was still shaken up, and he agreed to stay the rest of the night. I made up the couch for him, and we sat up and talked about the strange event for a while, exchanging various theories until both of us felt safe enough to sleep. Whatever had been outside my window was probably long gone, and I was even beginning to believe it could have been some sort of animal. I had been half asleep when it all happened, and it could easily have been a deer or even a coyote or something, and I had let my imagination get the better of me. I slept until almost noon, and then I woke up. Steve was still asleep on the couch, and so I sat down to write this all out. It's what I do. I'm a freelance writer, and typing this out just feels right, cathartic even. I've already decided not to tell Will what happened, at least not while he's away. He's a worrywart, and it would only upset him. He'll be home in 3 days, and I'll tell him then. I'm looking out the window towards the tree line now, and feeling unsettled all over again. My dogs are curled up nearby, and Steve, with his shotgun, are one room over. I'm perfectly safe, but something just feels off today. Something's not right, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is. It's making it difficult to sit still for long. I keep finding myself looking out the window. For the first time, I feel intimidated by my new house, the isolation and remoteness of it. The forested area of the edge of the property was a big deciding factor when we bought this land. There's a good hiking back in there, and the trees are beautiful in the winter, but now it's a foreboding place to me, a place where bad things can hide. The worst part of it is not knowing what or who had been practically pressed against my bedroom window. Maybe it had been a deer and I was overreacting, but if it had been a human, why my window? Why my house? And why on the first night I was there alone? Could they have been watching, waiting for this particular night? I know your mind can go to some pretty dark places when it's the middle of the night. Things always seem scarier then. But after that happened, can you blame me? Big Ben hasn't let me get much more than 3 feet from him since last night. Nina and Danny are a little restless too. I let them outside in the fenced yard for a bit. Running around and playing seemed to help their moods. But Ben didn't go out and play. He went to the edge of the yard, did his business, and came right back to be glued at my side. I don't think I've seen his ears relax since Will left. I took a walk around the deck just now. It wraps around the the whole house. With a gate you have to go through to get to the part that overlooks the fenced yard. When I opened it, I noticed it wasn't latched all the way. I figured Steve had neglected to put it shut the entire way, when he was checking things out last night. Along the side of the deck where the animal or person had been, I had large planters with hydrangea. That's how you say that? Hydrangea.
Hydrangea?
Yeah. There we go. That word, growing.
Got you.
Uh, it didn't take long to notice the blooms are wilted and brown, like they'd been nipped by frost. I know it wasn't cold last night, and the discovery has weirded me out all over again. I'm going to show Steve when he gets up, and maybe we can figure out who or what was skulking around my house in the dead of the night. That's the end of part 1. Any thoughts? What do you think it is?
I mean, I automatically just think skinwalker, because those can be like really tall and lanky, and they like hunt people.
I think I'm going to go with a Yeti because if like a Yeti kind of like maybe a Bigfoot, but like more Yeti because if her hydrangea buds are like brown, maybe they have
Yeah,
like cold.
I didn't really know about what happened there.
Would you live in this house in the wilderness in Denver on the first floor?
Uh, that's a tough one. It it sounds like it could be somebody's dream. Something about Colorado is like really eerie to me, so I'm not sure if I'd want to live isolated there. Maybe it's, well, I've been listening to I think it's Up and Vanish, and there's a case in Colorado, and it's like small town. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that'd be for me. Maybe in a different place.
Maybe you'd visit just like you'd visit Jenna's hospital from last week.
Yeah, I've thought about it more and more. I would. I think that I would. Because if I'm going to have an encounter, it just feels like I'd want to have an encounter with something that's not going to feel like it's like haunting you. Like if it's just messing with you like one time, or it's just nice to you like one time, and then you get a little spooked and it's gone and you don't feel uneasy. That sounds great. I want that experience if I'm going to have an experience. If I need to be brave in one instance, it's then. Plus, she said they renovated it and it's really cute.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's. I do like that they use the cremation stacks as a fireplace, and that feels like I'm now off the hook for my use of a headstone. My fire.
Whatever makes you feel better.
I
Whatever
think
makes you feel better.
it's much comparison. The cool part about this story is, or a lot of these stories, is obviously they're on Reddit, so they're actually like you can go through and read the thread. The people like were commenting on it as this person was like posting updates, quote unquote, to the story. So you can see like real time what people are thinking, like what their thoughts are on it from like 8
And
years
what were
ago.
they saying?
The one that's a non-human, so like kind of like you said, a humanoid non-human. So very similar to your idea that it's a skinwalker. Um, Someone said they were reading this at 4:15 in the morning while their wife nurses their newborn, and they got up to change a diaper, and he heard a loud thud downstairs, and he almost shit his pants.
Yeah, it's fair. That is fair. I like, there are still people in my house, but my mom is out of town, and I feel very much alone on this side of the house. So yeah, I might not go anywhere tonight.
So here's
Yeah,
part
after
2.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. All right. Part 2. There's quite a bit in this update, so bear with me. Just so there's no confusion, everything from the original post happened Monday/Monday night. Yesterday or Tuesday was pretty quiet, but today got weird again. Suffice it to say, tonight didn't go so well either. I showed Steve my wilted flowers when he woke up Tuesday morning, and he had no explanation for it. Steve is kind of sketchy. I'm kind of thinking Steve has something to do with this. Now that I think about it,
Steve is
maybe.
sketchy?
I mean, what if he's not Steve? Like he came. I know he only lives like a half mile away, but what if he is like a skinwalker impersonating Steve, and Steve's dead?
You seem so concerned, though.
Just playing the part, trying to get confidence in him.
Well, I thought skinwalkers, they'll like impersonate animals, and so it would be like a deer, but it will be like not quite right.
What's the one that impersonates people? Is it
Well, I think that's still supposed to be skinwalker, just because True Blood. I'm pretty sure that's what they call it.
Yeah, I think Well, I think also in Supernatural they call it a skinwalker. Maybe I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve was not concerned about the flowers. The closest explanation either of us can come up with was some sort of parasite or fungus got to them.
Excuse me.
He spent some time inspecting the woods around the house and found nothing suspicious or out of place. I didn't sleep great last night, but otherwise all was well. This morning, though, I woke up too early. It was around 5, and it was still pretty dark outside. I could hear the footsteps out in the woods again. It sounded like it was just barely far enough out that I couldn't see it. Big Ben kept growling at the door, and I phoned Steve around 9, and he came over to check things out once more. By the time he arrived, the sounds were gone. He tried to convince me it was deer, and that the sound of his truck pulling in drove them back into the woods. I want to believe him. Steve hung around for a while, but had to leave for work in the early afternoon. He works at an animal clinic in the city. He promised to come by and check in on me on his way home. So aside from the dogs, I was left alone again. After he left, I called and talked to Will for a while. I think he knew something wasn't quite right, but he didn't press the issue. Oh, and he had somewhat irritating news. His team is having to extend their trip for an extra day, or maybe 2, so I'll be here even longer alone. I tried getting some work done after the phone call, but found it was hard to concentrate, and I was pretty tired. I decided to take a short nap in hopes that I would feel better when I woke up. I slept just under an hour and was woken by the heat. I hadn't left any windows open, and it was hot enough outside, 90 degrees according to AccuWeather, that I should have turned on the AC. So now, on top of being stressed and worried, I felt hot, cranky, and still tired. I went ahead and booted up the air, even though even the open windows could have done the job. I'm not too keen on having any windows open at the moment. While the place cooled down, I took a shower. And then the weirdness began again. Yay. After I took my shower, I dried off and headed to the bedroom to get dressed, which is when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I froze. At first, I was confused and then scared. It wasn't one of the dogs. It couldn't have been. The movement occurred at roughly eye level, and not even Big Ben is that big, for God's sake. It was a subtle movement, almost like a shadow or a shifting light. It happened in less than 5 seconds. I stared at the spot I thought I had seen it happen, just outside the big window in the living room. Nothing else moved, and I strained to think of what it could have been. The curtains were tied back securely, and even if the window had been open, it wouldn't have been flapping in the breeze causing the motion. Whatever had moved was outside. It was like it had caught sight of the tail end of something passing by the window. Of course, I was too scared to go look. And then Ben growled again. The noise made me jump into action. I darted back into the bedroom where my revolver was. Ben was up and looking to me with this almost human expression. Maybe Ben is a skinwalker.
I mean, he's new.
He's no chip.
Part wolf.
Alarmed, or yeah.
It's all coming together.
Alarmed, aware, and alert all in one, he turned his attention back to the window. He let out a woof under his breath, and then he laid down in the bedroom doorway. It had upset Nina and Danny too. They were restless. I looked at the empty room where Ben stared, and I was wondering if I'd imagined it, when a rushing noise, almost like a heavy gust of wind, emanated through the whole house. So up until now, everything that's happened can technically be explained. But this made my skin prickle. I have never heard anything like that in my house before. It was a rushing sound that couldn't have possibly come from the vents. And I wasn't hearing wind outside either. It sounded like a breath of wind inside. But nothing in the house shifted, and I felt no movement of air. Ben loudly barked at the sound. I stood rooted to the spot, afraid to move for what seemed like ages. I was terrified that somehow moving would trigger that sound again. Finally, I crossed the room, slow and silently. I reached into the jewelry box on the dresser and shook it out onto the bed. I found what I was looking for pretty quickly, an antique silver cross necklace that had been my grandmother's. I pulled it over my head, shaking it like a leaf the entire time. I don't know what made me do it. Just that it made me feel safe to have it on. I didn't know what else to do at that point. I'm not even over religious, but in that moment of fear, I wanted my grandmother's cross. Ben leapt onto the bed and stood listening for a minute. Danny and Nina hid in the small walk-in closet like they did when it thundered. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, listening like Ben was. Nothing else happened, but I was too scared to really investigate anything further. It was only when the light in the room began to change, indicating the sunset had begun, that I left the room, and the revolver went with me. I peeked out the window where I had seen, or thought I had seen, movement. The deck was calm and empty. If someone had walked across it when it was quiet outside, I should have heard that. Maybe I did imagine it, but at this point, I couldn't really believe that I had. All the doors and windows were secure. I double and triple checked that. I checked the backyard through the kitchen window to make sure it was empty before letting the dogs out. As uneasy as it made me to open the back door, I'd rather do it before dark. They all did their business and came right back inside, which was unusual since they normally stayed outside to goof off for a while. I did something pretty childish when they came back in. I pulled all the window coverings closed and then turned the light on in every single room. The idea of dark corners in my house was just too freaky for me. I had a few hours to wait for Steve, so I tried to carry on as usual. I got dinner for me and the dogs, started laundry, and turned on the TV for background noise in the meantime. My revolver and my phone were never out of reach the entire evening. I watched TV for a while I waited for Steve, but I was unable to fully concentrate on anything. I was too busy listening, waiting. But all I heard was Steve's car pull in the drive around 11, which was a huge relief. I let him in, told him about the movement I'd seen and the inexplicable noise that followed. He looked genuinely disturbed as I talked and scolded me for not calling him. I told him a few Redditors here suggested motion sensor lights and cameras, and he agreed that's a good idea. He was about to go home to check on his own animals when something slammed against the south side of the house. And when I say slam, I mean hard. Like so hard the floors vibrated. And let me tell you, I nearly pissed myself.
The dogs went into instant alarm mode, barking and running in the direction of where the noises came from. I immediately grabbed my gun. My hand was shaking so badly I couldn't have hit the broadside of a barn. I was terrified. It happened a second time. Bam! This time further along the wall. Steve said something along the lines of, "What the fuck?" And I was on the verge of crying. I was so scared. And then it happened a third time. Bam! Even further down the wall. It was like someone was walking around the deck and periodically smacking the shit out of my house. Steve took the revolver from me without a word and moved slowly towards the other side of the house. I crumpled onto the floor beside the couch, too afraid to do anything else. Ben was there by my side, a giant furry shield against whatever was tormenting us. "Don't go outside," I pleaded, but Steve had no intention of leaving the house. He shut the lights off in the bedroom, bathroom, and my tiny home office, all which shared the south wall of the house. I could tell he was peering out the windows. After a moment, he called to me. "There's nothing here." There was no more slamming against my house. At that point, though, I had had enough. This latest event felt like the most malicious one of all. It felt like a challenge or a warning. I knew I wasn't staying in the house tonight. I told Steve I had to get out, and he said that of course the dogs and I could stay with him. I packed my phone, laptop, and change of clothes, and the revolver, grabbed my purse, gathered up the dogs, and we all walked out the drive together. Steve waited right by my Jeep while I loaded the dogs in and saw that I was safely locked in before getting into his truck. I followed him and we noped the hell out of there. So I'm writing this from Steve's kitchen. I'm looking at my house down the road. It looks a lot calmer from here, but I know if I was inside of it, I wouldn't feel very calm. I'm now surrounded by 2 extra dogs, both Steve's, and his cats are roaming around as well. The cats aren't going to do shit.
Hey, my cat's here protecting me.
My one
They're the
cat,
protector of realms.
my one cat will like literally go freaking pet like lick a burglar's hand. That which one's that?
Is Ripley.
Oh,
She's pissed. That's okay though. She sleeps on me. Like I could be sleeping on my side and she'll just be perched right on top.
she is your protector.
Yes, she's my protector of this realm, which is stupid. I've been trying to figure out how to get to different timelines.
We have to build the damn machine. Yeah.
Just go poking around the forest. You're supposed to just like walk into different doors.
I mean, it like I said, we go to Pennsylvania, go where the gates of hell.
There's gotta be
Find-
other doors. Let's try any of the other random doors out in the woods.
Go up we'll find a staircase. They always say if you find a staircase in the woods, you should definitely go up the staircase.
Really? That's a saying? Never heard that.
No.
Sounds suspicious, but willing to give it a shot.
We're gonna go get some surveillance stuff tomorrow. Maybe look into filing a police report about all of this. I might have to break down and tell Will what happened. I haven't decided yet. This is getting very weird, very fast. There's too many things about this that are just off. Something isn't right, and I can't strain my mind on it anymore tonight. I already feel a headache coming on. I can see the deck of my house from here. I left the exterior lights on and a few inside, hoping it would deter anyone or anything from vandalizing the place. Now I wish I had.
deter it before? That's the side of the house that it was hitting. Was the one with all the lights on.
Well, to be fair, I think the lights were off outside when they were hitting the house, whatever it was.
I thought she had all the lights on waiting for him to get there.
Oh yeah, you're right. They did. She did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another failed thing for her to do.
Let's try this again.
Now I wish I hadn't kept those lights on. I swear I just saw a figure pass by the bedroom window.
Told ya.
They don't give a Skinwalkers don't give a shit about your lights, bro. Like they don't give a shit about that. Small update 1. Danny woke me up howling in her sleep like she was having a bad dream. I shook her awake and she acted like nothing was wrong. It startled me badly enough that I can't get back to sleep yet. Also, I don't think I've ever heard Danny howl before. Big Ben cuddled up to her and they're snoozing at the foot of the bed. I'm just trying to wind back down at this point. Small update 2. Steve and I have discovered some weird things at the house today. I will detail it all in full in an update later this evening. For now, I'm just hanging out at Steve's house and trying not to be too paranoid. Steve's getting a little too cozy.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't understand why it's not messing with Steve's house, but she can like see her house from Steve's house.
What if Steve is not Skinwalker, but what if he's like summoning some kind of demon or ghost?
You think?
You never know. He's getting awfully close to her the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. Suspicious.
Part 3.
It's got super sour.
You're still eating the damn. Your mouth is gonna be so your mouth is gonna be so burned from all that sour candy.
I can feel it.
Steve and I found some things today, disturbing things. After I updated early this morning when Danny woke me up, I had a terrible time getting back to sleep. I almost drifted off when I nearly vaulted out of the bed. I heard what I thought to be a baby crying. Upon waking up, the more I figured out. Upon waking, I figured out it sounded more like one of the cats meowing or howling, sort of like they do when they're picking a fight with one other cat. I think I fell back asleep before it stopped because it seemed to go on and on. Steve and I drove back to the house after breakfast. Danny and Nina refused to get in the car, so I left them at Steve's. Ben, of course, came along with no problem. Yeah, see, Ben is like up to something. Something is going on with Ben.
Yeah.
He's
Ben's
not,
the Skinwalker.
He could be. I feel like he's. I'm thinking more and more that that's what it is.
Or he's a werewolf.
Or he's a werewolf. That could. Yeah, that hasn't been a full moon yet. At least not according to her. Doesn't like mention it, but
He was the noise outside originally, and that's why the window was open. He came back in.
That's a good point.
Or something was coming to get him. His mom.
Fucking mom coming to beat him.
Bum bum bum.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that. He could definitely have been, because she never left windows open before, and all of a sudden, conveniently, it's open.
Yeah. Like something came in or something was going out. I don't know.
So we were walking the perimeter of the deck together, spotted something on the exterior wall. It freaked me out so bad, I wanted to leave right then. But Steve was interested in inspecting it further. Typical guy.
Yeah.
I would do that.
I'm out.
It was a faint handprint, but not an actual print. More like a painting in the shape of a hand. I say that because it had no lines or fingerprints like a real handprint would. Just a solid shape of a hand. Oh yeah, and it was bright red, which is just lovely. There's also a mild, almost smoky smell hanging in the air. I feel like I smelled it up before, but can't place what it was. It's not an unpleasant smell, but given the situation, it's not helping the creepy factor. We went to inspect the front deck, where the other smell hit us. It was terrible, like garbage mingling with week old roadkill. Steve got his flashlight from his truck and shone it under the deck, but nothing had crawled there and died. There was nothing to indicate why it would smell like absolute shit in that particular spot. If you backed away from the deck 10 feet, the smell was gone. It was just around the area of the front door. Big Ben just took a massive shit. That's what it was. Yeah. Maybe. He just took a massive dump. Like, all right, this will keep all the ghosts away.
I guess, yeah.
Then we inspected the inside of the house and found nothing out of place. I grabbed some more clothes, my phone charger, which I'd forgotten in my hurry to get the heck out last night, and some dog food for my kiddos. If you hadn't guessed already, I have no intention whatsoever of staying here alone until this whole thing gets figured out. I did one more walk around the deck before leaving. When I opened the gate into the backyard, I spied something caught on the latch, something glinting in the sunlight, almost like spider silk. I took a closer look and discovered a single strand of silvery gray hair was caught on the latch. I removed it and took a good look. It was almost twice as long as my hair, and anyway, I don't have any grays yet. Although after this whole ordeal, I won't be at all surprised to see some cropping up. This didn't belong to anyone I knew or had even been around here. I was going to show Steve my dumbass let the wind catch it, and it flew off into the tall grass. Damn it. We got in the car and headed to the city so I could look for some cameras and some motion censored lights. We drove by my house on the way back, and all seemed normal. Steve left for work around noon, and I sat in the living room trying to figure out how I would get the new equipment set up. I got 4 motion sensor lights and an infrared wildlife camera. We're going back to set it all up in the daytime. No way either of us are going to the house tonight. I started watching my house from Steve's window. Nothing interesting happened, and so I got bored and played on his Xbox for a bit. All afternoon it was quiet. It was another hot day, and the dogs were glad to spend most of it inside with me. I made some dinner for me and for Steve to have when he got home, fed all of the animals, played with the cats, and did a little work on my laptop. When I sat down and wrote the second mini update on the last post, I thought there wasn't going to be much else in this one. Guess again. So Steve has a deck like mine, only it runs along the length of one side of his house. I was on the couch trying to get a little more work done, answering the post replies and listening to music. I had a ceiling fan on and the windows were all closed. There is a sliding glass door that opens onto the deck. I was facing this door. Steve has those vertical blinds over it instead of curtains. I had them closed, but the fan was stirring them just enough so they opened a sliver in certain places, like in a cycle. Like they'd be blown open a bit in this one particular spot and then closed. Open, closed, open, closed. There's also little solar powered lanterns on his deck. They were on, but were getting dim. I should have had the floodlight on, but I thought being here in his house, I could get away with not being a paranoid nut. Wrong. I was absentmindedly looking at the sliding door while I worked, just brainstorming, and noticed I could see one of the little solar lights every time the vertical blinds blew open. Until they blew open and the light was gone. It took a moment to register what was happening. I entertained the thought that they'd gone out just long enough to remember that they fade out, they don't just turn off. So for the second time in 24 hours, I nearly pissed myself. There was something standing between the window and the light. Shit. Every door and window was locked, but damn it if I wasn't so petrified I couldn't move. I was thinking if the blinds opened an inch more, I'd get a better look at what was blocking the lights. And in the same thought, I prayed to God that they wouldn't. Ben was asleep on the floor right beside the couch. In my horrified state, I still had the presence of mind to try something. I reached down and gently shook him awake, wondering if he'd pick up on anything when he woke. And boy, did he ever. He looked at me curiously, thumped his tail, still pleasantly drowsy. All I did was point at the window. He looked where I was pointing and immediately stood bolt upright. His hackles were raised. He shouldn't have had any idea something was wrong, but he believed something was there as much as I did. He took a few stalking steps toward the door and then did something I'd never seen him do. He snarled at it, like a full on, teeth showing, eyes flashing, throaty snarl. It was a pretty intimidating thing to behold. Then there was a sound like something smacking a sliding glass door with their hand and then dragging it along, making that awful squeaking noise of skin on glass. Ben barked sharply at the sound, and there was a series of loud thumps, and I knew the person or thing outside was retreating. On the next beat of the blinds, I could see the solar light again. Whatever had been outside was gone. Ben barreled toward the door, going absolutely crazy. All the other dogs showed up and were barking too. Danny was practically beside herself. She went under Steve's computer desk and peered out fearfully. I called to her, but she wouldn't come out. I shushed them all so I could phone Steve. I was pretty upset at that point. I thought seriously about calling the cops and also considered calling Will to tell him he needed to come home early. I still have not ruled that one out either. Steve said he'd leave work a little early so he can get home sooner. I hope he can. I'm beside myself here. I'm trying to occupy myself by getting this part written down, and I don't know if it's the wind playing tricks in my ears, but I swear I can hear talking outside, or someone calling a name that I can't quite make out, and whistling, but not like a bird, more like the way someone whistles when they want your attention. It's so windy I can barely hear it, but I'm sure it's not in my head. I'm currently huddled in the guest room with Netflix going on in the background on my laptop, just so I can't hear those noises outside. It's too freaky. Oh, and while I had Steve on the phone, I brought up the howling cats I heard last night. He informed me he had shut all 3 cats in the house before bed. Update 1. Steve is home now. I'm not alone anymore. First thing he asked when he got in was if I had heard voices and whistling outside. We're talking about possibly getting police involved, but we're worried as soon as we start talking about this unexplainable stuff, they're going to think we've been smoking too much and will blow us off. Update 2. I just woke up from a really bad nightmare and went to write about it here. I dreamt I was in my house. It was like it was night, but not night. The sky was dark, but I could see things clearly. I heard something like wind chimes outside, so I went to look. I could see something hanging in the trees, clanking together and making the noise. I thought it was sticks at first, but pretty soon it became clear it was fucking bones dangling from the branches. They banged together and made this weird, hollow sound. Dream me was just beginning to think that they were all human bones when the dream morphed into something different. I was running alone in the dark on all fours. Maybe she is the werewolf.
Maybe. I don't know. There's so many twists and turns.
So I was running along in the dark on all fours. All I could see was a trail ahead of me. Something was driving me to keep running in that direction, but I wasn't fully aware what it was. In the darkness on either side of me, the whispering began. A soft sound at first, so indistinct it might have been wind. Then it got faster, more urgent, until hundreds of voices were whispering. Then they were chattering. I couldn't quite understand any words, and I found I didn't really care. I just had to keep running. I wasn't scared, but determined. The chattering got louder and more anxious sounding until the voices were like a howling wind. I kept running, and then I was normal me again, laying in my own bed in my own house, and something warm was across my chest. It was heavy, but not in a bad way. In fact, there was something extremely comforting about it. I touched the warm thing, and it was soft. It seemed like I was safe in this dream until I noticed a figure in the doorway. It was tall, thin, and human like, but at the same time, something was terribly wrong with it that made it seem far less human, distorted, stretched. I wanted to hide, but the warm, heavy thing on me kept me from um, hurling myself off the bed. I couldn't see any distinct features in the figure, but I could tell it was looking right at me. And then I woke up for real, still in Steve's guest room, with my hand full of Big Ben's coat. I got up to write this out and discovered my grandmother's cross necklace was off. I've been sleeping with it on since that first night. Naturally, I freaked and started looking for it. I found it tangled up in a blanket I had kicked onto the floor in my sleep. I don't recall taking it off, and it's the kind of necklace with a clasp. You can't just take it on and off over your head. I don't know if I'll be going back to sleep after that nightmare. I still feel half sick. Update 3. It's about 6 a.m. here, and I haven't been able to get back to sleep. Will is coming home today, and I'm going to have him sit down with me to fill him in on everything. We'll be working on installing new lights and the infrared camera, and I'm going to try to get some decent rest tonight. I just feel like crap right now, and I haven't had a decent night's sleep since Sunday, and I'm just so worn out, both emotionally and physically. I look about 5 years older. I feel about 5 years older. So it might be a day or two before I post another full update, but I promise I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. You'll hear about anything that happens before the weekend is over. Scout's honor. I have to be at the airport in a few hours to pick up Will. I'm taking Big Ben with me.
Of course you are.
And this, guys, is where we will end part 1. We'll pick up part 2 with of this podcast with part 4/5. Halfway done.